Bob Curry, who served with the same SAS unit as myself, hit the headlines last week when it was revealed he was homeless and Hereford Council had reportedly failed to house him. I'm sure Bob will be looked after thanks to support from celebrities, the public and the regiment. He's lucky to have a cap badge that gets the media's attention. My concern, however, is the vets who fall on hard times and go unheard. I've nearly come unstuck more than once myself. Ex-service men and women are proud and hold back before asking for help. But there are plenty of others who exploit the benefit system, while those who deserve help are hung out to dry. No one who serves their country should ever be left in the lurch or anywhere near the back of the housing queue. I'd like to see veterans from all of our frontline services, police, firefighters and nurses, given priority when they fall on hard times. It's not that others should be shelved, but those who served to keep us all safe at night should be looked after first.
It's interesting, you know, after Bob Curry was on television last week, I went online and was looking at the comments about it, and I thought I would find universal sympathy for him. And I didn't. I found some hideous comments from people who clearly have no idea what him and people like yourself, ex-servicemen, have done. You've seen done things that none of us can envisage in our worst nightmares. And I found there was not the kind of sympathy out there that I thought there would be. And then I started to do some reading into this. And it turns out that this government doesn't keep a record of the number of homeless ex-servicemen we have. They care so little about them, there is no official record.
It doesn't know. Even the British Legion, which is set up to help ex-servicemen, they don't know. And it needs gripping.
Homeless Charities put together a list a few months ago, and they said that there are 7,000 ex-servicemen living rough on our streets.
While you're just there, can I just remind everybody what Bob actually did and the level of commitment that he was prepared to show in the good and benefit of everybody in this country. Let's have a quick picture. Here we go. They're on the balcony. There you go.
So what is this?
This is the Iranian embassy siege in 1980. There you go. The embassy had been taken over by bad guys, so I'm going to break it right down for people, and they were holding hostages. And a team of SAS went in and basically rescued the hostages and engaged with the enemy, like you do.
And Bob's nickname in that, he was called Backdoor Bob.
That's right, yeah, Backdoor Bob.
He saw an unexploded explosive, he ran at it, kicked it out of the way and smashed through a window. He was the first man inside that, so which was a pretty incredible thing to do. And there's a thing called the Armed Forces and Community Covenant. I know you're going to say something about this. This was in 2012, and every local authority in the country was asked to sign up to this. And the deal was they had to promise to give affordable housing, to give priority to ex-servicemen for the affordable housing.
Should we just read that?
By its very nature, we'll never... I'm going to give you a figure in a moment for one thing we can hang our hat on, which is how many veterans there are in this country, and I think that figure might surprise everybody. But by its very nature, we'll never know the exact number of them. But let's take a look at a statistic that we can all sign up to, which is 2.5 million UK Armed Forces veterans in Great Britain. Now, that obviously doesn't mean they're homeless. It is a percentage thereof that is. But what I found truly astonishing about the story about your former SAS colleague is that it was reported that the only person who survived, the only terrorist who survived the Iranian embassy, it was reported
he'd done a bit of bird, didn't he?
He got a life term, which of course doesn't mean a life term in Britain anymore.
He's out already,
and he's now out, and it is reported that he's enjoying council accommodation in South London. But where I challenge you, just quickly, Badgie, just let me... And listen, you'd have to be stark raving mad or Afua Hirsch not to agree with what you just said. I'm only kidding. As regards veterans, but Phil, nurses, police officers,
anyone who's giving their time front line, long hard hours for the benefit of other people.
Phil, until recently, a police officer could retire after 40 years with, not anymore, but with full salary pension. It doesn't exist anymore, but it used to exist until some years ago. So a bloke or woman goes in, does 40 years, comes out, maybe he's not even 50, about 50, whatever he might be, mid-50s, so he can go and do something else, do another business, and we're funding him or her full salary. You would need a pension pot, somewhere in the region of £2.5 million to enjoy that, and that's what we have been giving, I repeat, not now. So you've got to look at the economics there.
Look, life takes many twists and turns, and let's not forget there's 2.5 million vets. Not all of them are in desperate trouble. OK? And we don't know the figure for the ones that are. So what I'm saying is nobody... I wouldn't leave one behind on the battlefield. I ain't going to leave one behind in Civvy Street.
Carol mentioned the Armed Forces Covenant. Let's just have a look at the precise wording of that. This is what we, as a country...
Again, and I've got something to say about that and all.
Sure. So let's have a look at that. Those who served in the armed forces, whether regular or reserve, those who have served in the past and their families should face no disadvantage compared to other citizens in the provision of public and commercial services. Special consideration is appropriate in some cases, especially for those who have given most, such as the injured and the bereaved. What I do think, Phil, is in having an American wife, I travel a lot to the US and I see the difference in culture with the way in which US veterans are meted and greeted. And they are often told, thank you for your service. And I don't think that culturally we do enough as a country in that way. So I don't know how often you've been told just by passers-by, thank you for your service. But I think that it's a touch which, though a gesture, I think points to a wider shift in culture that I think needs to happen in the way that we generally as a society see our
think if we cross-pollinated, I mean, we do everything else for the Americans.
Yeah.
You know, we go to war with them, we do everything else with them. Where we don't cross-pollinate is on our veteran aftercare, OK? And we could learn a lot from the Americans for sure.
But this covenant here, this covenant, I think it was 407 local authorities signed up to it. And you know what that even made? They've now, because they've signed up to it and they're obliged to give housing to ex-servicemen, they've now handed it to housing associations which don't have the obligation to do that. And they're even trying to diddle your people out of homes by saying, because there's a loophole, instead of saying should be, the covenant says should be given an advantage over affordable housing, because it doesn't say must be. They're not actually enforcing.
It's a token effort again, isn't it? It's one of these things they promise with one hand and take away with the other.
A kind of right of reply to the council involved for Bob Curry, which is Herefordshire Council, and they say our commitment to the Armed Forces Covenant, which we were just talking about, means we prioritise housing for former members of the services and they're given an advantage on the waiting list. Mr Curry has been on the social housing waiting list since we met with him, and he has placed a bid on a property. But what I agree with everything that's been said. I agree. I think it's a disgrace that we ask people to risk their lives in service and then we treat them like this. And we were having a debate just a few weeks ago about the problems with the armed forces recruiting new servicemen and women. Well, it's not surprising. If you're a young person, you think you're going to end up on the streets having risked your life. Why would you sign up? I completely agree with what you're saying. The only thing I would add is that I don't see this as a zero-sum game, as in I don't think we should be choosing between housing our servicemen and women and housing other public sector workers or housing families.
There should be a pecking order.
I can see why you're saying that, but
your service to this country puts you at the top of it straight away in my book.
The reality is, right, we have seen a 73% increase in homelessness in this country in 3 years. It is a dire situation. There are so many people that I think we could all agree in a civilised country we do not want to see reduced to living on the streets or in hostels or in homeless shelters, including 120,000 children. So I agree with what you're saying. I agree that there are people who've made unique sacrifices should be looked after, but I'm not comfortable with the idea that if we solve that problem, we can rest easy, because there are so many people.
Can I just point out, and this has been proved in what happened to Bob, the Armed Forces Covenant came in 2012. Well, Bob probably got out in about 87 or something like that, do you know what I mean? So it doesn't filter down either. And like I say, and I mentioned it earlier, forces guys are proud of what they did and don't often stand up for themselves. And so when this information is just given to local councils, they're not busting your door down to give it to you, are they? Do you know what I mean? They're not helping out. So this stuff isn't getting through, and it's proven it's not getting through. And the fact that we've still got homeless troops.
Also about the failure of successive governments to build council housing and also losing their stock and now relying on housing associations, because as you were saying, then there's so much less control.
There is, yeah.